So I'm going to tell you in a few points about how we have been deceived in the vaccine push. Now, some of you already received the vaccine, and if you've been fine, and that's good. I'm not saying that everyone who received the vaccine would get sick and perish, but rather that they would inflate certain numbers, they would suppress other numbers, and they would make you not be able to tell what alternatives there are in order to push the narrative that the science is settled, so you just do as you are told. Because you've been hearing that vaccination is not just an individual decision, it is your social virtue. If you don't do the vaccine, you're a selfish and ignorant idiot, and you're killing your neighbor and your grandma and your grandpa and everybody else. So as a medical doctor, we understand that for a policy to fight against the pandemic or any kind of pandemic, there are three pillars. One is containing the source of the disease and cutting out the spread. The second is boosting the immunity in the population, and the third is treatment of the sick. And any good policy should include those three pillars. Now, do you hear about treatment of the sick these days? No. All you hear about is the first two, and even the first two have been really, really warped. You're not hearing the truth about the first two. Why? Because in the second, about boosting the immunity in the population, all you hear is vaccine. Other than vaccine, nothing else counts. How about recovery of those who previously have been infected? No, not a thing heard about that. How about improving the general immunity or the immune system of people? No, you don't hear anything about that. In the beginning of the pandemic, before there was the vaccine, you hear doctors talk about using NAC, using vitamin D, all that, but now you don't hear anything. Do you want to not get a disease? Get the vaccine. Or you mask up. Like Pelosi was demanding everybody mask up, don't go out, but you know what? Does she actually believe that mask works? No, she didn't. She went out after she made that edict that everybody who entered the Capitol Hill area without a mask would be arrested. What did she do? She went out, mingled with other people without a mask. And therefore, those people who make these outrageous policies, they don't actually believe it. But I'm going to talk mostly from the science part because, hey, that's the hat I wear. I'm not a politician, at least not yet. So I'm going to talk from the science part and from both data that are all searchable, published data, and also from my medical experience. So the first part is that the role of vaccination during this pandemic have been inflated. Not saying that everything is made up, but it's inflated. Now, let's say, just like during the time of last couple of years, a lot of people say, oh, there is a lot of police brutality against blacks. There have been some, but a lot of people from the media would get the impression that that is like overwhelming everywhere. And it's like all the violences that happened were because of the police, not because of the crime. But the actual numbers are different. But why do people get a different impression? Because one thing gets amplified, the other not. So we generally misunderstand the benefit of the vaccine because it got amplified. So we said the vaccine is 95% effective. What does it mean? Well, they did the phase 3 study with 20,000 people on one side, 25,000 people on the other side. One side gave the vaccine, the other side didn't. And so 160 people on the vaccinated side, 116 people, 60 people on the non-vaccinated side got tested positive, and 8 got tested positive on the vaccine side. So they calculated it's 95% effective. But if you look at it in a different way, how many people do you need to vaccinate to prevent one infection? It would be between 200 to 700 people. So you have to vaccinate 200 to 700 people to prevent one infection, and you have to vaccinate somewhere between 9,000 to 50,000 people to prevent one death. Now, this number is going to be helpful in when we understand if we are looking at the number of side effects or adverse effects from the vaccinated people. So let's say if 1 in 100 get side effects that are very severe, but you need 200 to 700 people to be vaccinated to prevent one infection, you say, well, you're actually causing more people to be sick to prevent one infection. And also, you cannot extrapolate this into different strains because they did it in the time that there was only the original strain. All right. So the talking point is that vaccinated people do not pass out on the disease, but only the unvaccinated people are the ones who are so inconsiderate of others. They are spreading the disease. But actually, the actual real-world data didn't say that. In Israel, 60% effective rate against the Delta variant for the vaccine, and it's dropping. For those who were vaccinated in January, the protection is down to 39%. So as soon as you reach about the 6-month mark, it's not really all that useful against the Delta variant. And also in the hospital in Israel, the percentage of people who have been vaccinated, who are sick, is the same percentage of people who are vaccinated in the population. About 80% of the people were vaccinated. About 80% of the sick people from COVID were vaccinated. The only group of people that did not get very sick from it are the people who had previously been infected with the disease and recovered from it. That is the truly God-given immunity that we have and should be used as the gold standard. You know, who are the ones who are immune, the one who had recovered. And but that is not being treated that way. In an outbreak in Massachusetts, that's the most recent report, 75% of the infected people were vaccinated. So I mean, I know it probably come as a big shock to some of you that have been vaccinated and thought that, okay, I'm good, I'm protected. But as time goes on and as maybe perhaps a new strain come out, the vaccine doesn't seem as effective as they've been promoting it to be. And using Tony Fauci's own word, when you look at the level of virus in the nasopharynx of vaccinated versus non-vaccinated people, it's exactly the same level of virus. So what does it mean? It's not that when you vaccinate yourself, you're not protecting against transmission to others. At best, it may help you prevent you from getting sicker. It might be effective that way, and if you tolerated the vaccine so far and it's good, you may be helped that way, but do not make that a moral issue that people who didn't get vaccinated, those are the people who are infecting the community. No, that's totally patently wrong. That's so those who have been infected and recover are proven the most immune to the disease. And both the number in the Israel and also a research in Cleveland Clinic prove that. Much better data compared to whatever the vaccine is. But unfortunately, every employer, government agency that demand that you be immune only demand proof that you received the vaccination, not demand that you prove that you either have infection. Like if you have measles, you don't need to take the measles vaccine. If you have rubella, you don't need to take the rubella vaccine. But this is the only time that deviates from the long-held tradition and medical practices that's understood. What does it mean? They're not about whether you are protected against illness. It's about whether you submit to their control. And so I'm going to speed up a little bit. Now, how about safety? Because if the vaccine is not as good as it came to be, but it's safe, then it doesn't matter. I mean, you can take vitamin D, it helps you a little bit. You can take NAC, it helps you a little bit. At least it won't hurt you. But the COVID vaccine, this is on a reporting system that's run by the government, so it's not something that I cooked up in my garage or in my own computer. Run by the government. It's called a WA4 system. People like me who saw a case of vaccines adverse reaction, I would put it in. It's a very tedious process. It took me 20 minutes to put in one case. So a lot of doctors probably would only put in one when he knows all the facts and very certain, okay? So look at this line. For the 19 years this database has been used, usually each year you get only about 200 to 400 deaths related to vaccination, all vaccinations together. In the first few months of 2021 alone, that line just went up the rocket into 11,000 by mid-July. So that is like a 300-fold jump. Now, give you a little comparison. The swine flu vaccine was paused, halted immediately after report of 50 deaths. And we now have report of 10,000 plus deaths. And everybody is like, nothing to see here, just move along, nothing to see here. Oh, that system is not trustworthy because it can be put in by anyone. As a doctor myself, I would say I underreported. Why? Because it's tedious. And also because it asks for all the details, when the vaccine was given, lot number, which arm, everything. If I didn't know everything, I would not put it in. So I would say I count at least 7 patients with severe enough problem that could have been life-threatening. Fortunately, they all survived from my patient. So only one of them was acknowledged by the hospital doctor that it was due to vaccine. The other ones were not acknowledged because nobody even thought that vaccine could do such a thing. So this healthy 65-year-old man, after the day after the second dose of vaccine, developed severe chest pain, and after 4 days he couldn't handle it anymore. Says, "Come see me." I did tests and said, "Yeah, you probably have a heart problem. We're going to have to do further tests and take medicine." And as we were communicating, he said, no, it's too bad. I'm in so much chest pain, I have to call 911. So got into ICU in trios for 1 day and had all the tests and only found that the heart was damaged, but his coronary arteries were completely clean. So he didn't have a heart attack, but just 1 day after the vaccination, something happened to his heart and almost died, but fortunately he survived. But these other ones, they were bad enough to be in hospital multiple times. Some had to get surgery multiple times. Unusual problems that none of the hospital doctors even asked, was that related to the vaccine you just got? So one of the 68-year-old, he had a second dose of the vaccine just 2 days before he planned coronary bypass surgery. Now, the coronary surgery was not related to the vaccine, but what was unusual was what happened afterwards. 1 month later, he had multiple blood clot to the lungs. Not one, not two, multiple, like spread every part of the lung, to both sides of the lungs. So, he survived that. Added another blood thinner. Now he's on 3 blood thinners, 2 for the coronary bypass and 1 for the blood clot to the lung. Another month later, one of the grafts already clotted out. So he had to go back into the hospital again, find out. It's very rare for the arteries graft, for the graft to clot out so soon. Usually it lasts for a year and beyond. And not only that, he was on 3 blood thinners and have the graft clotted out. So nobody asked, was that related to vaccine? Until, I saw him a couple months later. Another 71-year-old man had, planning on dialysis, has a graft made before he even had the chance of dialysis. The fistula, not graft, clotted out, that was while he was on Eliquis, another strong blood thinner, very unusual. Nobody asked, was that related to the vaccine? So I could go on more, but I'm going to skip some of these cases because the time constraint. Now, when we observe something weird happen, we may connect the dots and say, all these cases happen because there's one common area. Just like if you ate out in this restaurant, somebody else ate at this restaurant, and 8 hours later everybody get diarrhea, get sick, you would say, must be something that they ate in that same restaurant. But that's not allowed. We're not allowed to ask that question, and therefore a lot of doctors don't think about that. The inventor of the messenger RNA vaccine technology, Dr. Robert Malone, spoke against the technology that he invented after he received the vaccine himself because he saw something. So this is the mechanism that would cause you the problem. The vaccine, the little capsule of messenger RNA get into your deltoid. It's supposed to make those spike protein that your body recognizes. And if everything works as supposed, they stay anchored in your deltoid, and that would have been fine. Unfortunately, a lot of them didn't quite listen to their instruction, and they would go out to rest of the body and cause problem. And every place that have good amount of blood vessel can be target. And that's why the heart are the blood vessels, and even ovaries. I was talking about why I would say childbearing age women do not take the vaccine, because if these are distributed to ovary, even though you don't immediately have problem, the problem can come to your next generation or could affect your pregnancies. So, and why don't we hear more about it? Because the media and social media have been actively censoring. And Janet is going to talk about that because this actually happened to someone she dearly care about. So they censor anybody who speak out. Large groups of over 100,000 vaccine victims group in Facebook just disappear overnight. As soon as they get big enough to threaten their narrative, they disappear. Now, the third thing, real brief here. So, because I don't want people to leave here thinking that, okay, so vaccine is bad, COVID is bad, so we're doomed. But the third part is that they suppress the alternative. There are alternatives to vaccines. Treatments have been used in other nations. Doctors who treat in the front line are aware of that. The hydroxychloroquine, more people heard about it last year. Ivermectin, not only used in other countries, but also used in some of the U.S. hospitals. But, the information about that is not only suppressed, but also doctors were harassed if they tried to prescribe these medicine when having a patient with COVID. So the pharmacy received a letter from pharmacy board that says, ivermectin is not approved for treatment of COVID. Therefore, if you receive a prescription for that, you should call the doctor and question whether they know what they're doing. So these kind of harassment cause a lot of doctors and sometimes even when doctors prescribe the ivermectin, the pharmacy would say, I'm not going to dispense that. So the patients are not able to get it. So, yes, FDA hasn't run the test. They need to approve that. But something called off-label use of medicine have been done for a long time. I mean, there is a arthritis medicine that you can use for hand arthritis, but if you have pain in your hip, can I use it for you? Yes, and that's off-label use. Used all the time, as long as that medicine is safe. But these bureaucrats have been using their power to suppress all the information about it so that people think that the only option they have to fight against disease is either lock up, mask up, stay away from everybody, or get the vaccine. And even after getting the vaccine, still lock up, stay locked up, put on a mask. And that is how they are doing the control. And then they finally say, the science settled. Well, science never settles. Science always advanced by asking questions and proving your point. I ask you whether you can prove. Show me your actual data to counter mine. No, they don't do that. They just say, no, you are not in the position. I've been into these debates, and they say, no, you're just a clinical doctor. You're not in vaccine research. You're not in a position to challenge them. But I see these actual side effects. I wasn't so vocal against the vaccine until I'm seeing it in my own eye. That's okay. So actually, these people that pass out those little videos about the person who had gotten the vaccine who is shaking, those not fake, because one of my patients actually doing that 2 months since the vaccine, she has been shaking nonstop. So they are not happening to everybody, but some of the people are suffering. And what I wanted to urge everyone is that, yes, you might have already had the vaccine and you do fine, and that's great, but they are now pushing the vaccine into our schools. And that's where we have to absolutely stop them. That's a hill that I'm willing to die on. And because, by speaking out against vaccine, I'm putting myself at risk as a doctor. But I'm hope that that will encourage people who know something about the vaccine would also be encouraged to speak up. And I'm counting on our new school board members to protect our kids from the forced vaccine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.